始祖ユミルはフリッツ王を愛していた。
I hate this shit so much. Like, truly, forget all the other complaints you have about the Attack on Titan finale. This one thing, Ymir being in love with the man who enslaved and mutilated her, still keeps me up at night. Like, I read the manga, I knew it was coming, and it still pissed me off on pretty much every level. So, to maintain my sanity, I decided to make a video about it, as I kinda know what Ishiyama was going for here, the parallels he built between Mikasa and Ymir, but the man basically wrote the perfect answer for Ymir's life, then tried to swoop in at the end to make it extra profound, but if you think about it for more than 3 seconds, you realize it makes complete and utter nonsense. Like, pace myself. Like, just looking at the thematic optics of how the info is presented to us, it is borderline nonsensical and insulting to everything it's claiming to do. So let's just get this rant out of my soul, because it has been a long time coming. So I guess we gotta explain how we got here for those who watch my videos and don't know about this, as this whole thing didn't come out of complete nowhere. As you see, Mikasa killing Eren has been what this whole 2,000 years has been leading up to. The origin story for the world of Attack on Titan all begins with a girl named Ymir. She was part of an early Germanic-esque tribe that was enslaved by another tribe. Her home was destroyed, her parents probably killed, the survivors were enslaved with their tongues being cut out to render them mute. Effectively, it was an attempt to rob them of their personhood, to be nothing more than slaves to a tribe that had conquered them, with their leader putting them to work. And this was Ymir's life, till one day she left the pig pen open, allowing those pigs to go free and causing a ruckus. Then, when it was time to assign blame, Ymir's fellow slaves snitched on her to avoid being punished themselves, with Ymir's punishment being, of course, for the crime of letting out the pigs, unintentional or not, was to be hunted like an animal, chased by dogs, and shot with arrows till death, only for her to stumble into an old tree where she made contact with the mysterious life being that granted her the powers of the Titan. Yet, in spite of being effectively handed a nuke, Ymir would turn around and continue to serve the chief, who was the source of all the misery in her life, killing his enemies, building his cities, enriching him till he was the greatest tyrant the world had ever seen. Yet, when it came time to reward her for her service, he gave her the honor of bearing his children. So she had 3 daughters, and for 13 years would continue to be his slave, till the day came when an assassination attempt nearly killed the man's life, but Ymir took the spear to the chest for him instead. She died for her abuser, despite her seemingly endless healing factor, with her daughters then being forced to eat their mother's corpse so the king could keep the Titan's power and continue to build his empire, beginning a centuries-long horror story of conquest and subjugation built around using the descendants of Ymir to kill and oppress other people, till the descendants of Ymir were known as the Edenians and the de facto ethnic group of the empire. All the while, unbeknownst to most people, Ymir never truly died after that spear. While her body may have passed, her soul was trapped in what we now know to be the paths, a field of sand where she would still continue to serve the will of king that so poorly treated her. She continued to obey his descendants, following their commands, and every time someone had to become a Titan, she would have to physically build that body with sand in the time-dilated hell that was this purgatory. But eventually, one of the kings of the Fritz line decided he had enough of the violence. So he abandoned his people, built the walls for some of his subjects, and waited for the world to come and slaughter him in righteous revenge for all the atrocities he had committed. That is the timeline. And the tragedy of Ymir is what kickstarted all of it. She was stripped of her freedom, abused, made into a baby factory for the ambitions of a tyrant, with her not even getting any solace in death. She didn't just lose her autonomy, she lost her personhood. She was reduced to a thing that was expected to follow orders for an eternity. Even 2,000 years later, her legend mangled the tragedy of what happened to her, turning her into a deity and a folkloric story to tell young girls the importance of obedience. What happened to Ymir was fucked on every level. However, then we got the rumbling. Trapped between Eren and Zeke embodying the will of the king, this ordained bloodline that she has spent the last 2,000 years serving. The man was screaming at her to sterilize the entire Edenian population, all to end the suffering in a nihilistic temper tantrum. He's commanding her to follow his orders, invoking his blood, and for a moment, it seems like she will. But then Eren stepped in, and for the first time in her life, she is given a choice. Eren sees her for the poor abused child that she actually is, not some tool to be fought over and commanded, but a person who has experienced unimaginable suffering. So rather than commanding her what to do, Eren gives Ymir the choice to choose for herself what the next step is. And after 2,000 years of suffering, after an entire story of having her eyes shadowed to add the effect that she is just a thing, we see her cry, and she commands all the Titans in the world to eradicate all human life outside of a certain island. This moment is perfect. It's a climax to all the events of the story, a cautionary tale for all the children who are used as tools for reasons that they don't understand, with the world being forced to reckon with the monsters they've created. Ymir breaking free is as horrific as it is cathartic. Even if you don't agree with what she's doing, you understand the reasons for why she's doing it. As after everything that's happened to her, wanting to level the world, it feels a bit fair. She's a victim lashing out, and you understand her. You understand why she obeyed the king all this time, as she had been conditioned so thoroughly, that the one time that she did try a small act of rebellion, she was nearly killed for it. Her life brings to mind the stories of what happens to baby elephants that are abused and trained, where at birth they're taken from their mothers and chained next to trees, and no matter how much they'd pull against it, they can never break free, with that behavior becoming so ingrained into their psyches so that even when they're adults, even when they're unchained, they still cling to those same trees, as that's just what's been beaten into them. It's terrible, but you get it. Then the ending happened and complicates all of it. As it turns out, Ymir wasn't just a slave to King Fritz, she loved him as well. That was the true secret to why she served him even in death, artfully being conveyed to us as she stares longingly at him with other women. The reason why she took a spear to the heart. It's also why watching Mikasa kill Eren, kissing his decapitated corpse, was finally able to set her soul free, as seeing someone break the cycle allows Ymir to finally let go of what happened, to finally break free from Fritz's legacy and to go to sleep at last, ending the threat of the Titans forever or until the sequel. So I hate this, truly and utterly. But before I break into my full rant, let me explain what I think the work is going for and how it actually worked to create this situation, as it didn't come out of complete nowhere. See, this ending was probably always the plan. Ishiyama, the series creator, has been building this since chapter 1, with the central idea being the reason that Mikasa's actions were the ones to reach Ymir is because Mikasa's life just completely mirrored Ymir's own. As just like Ymir, Mikasa also had her life shattered as a child. When she was 9, slavers broke into her house, killed her parents, with also being here that she met the person who would define her for the rest of her life. Eren. Eren swooped in to save her and to help her fight for herself, taking her in, comforting her, and wrapping her in that oh so important scarf. This is an exact copy and paste of what happened to Ymir, as the situation she experienced was way worse, but the parallels are meant to explain why Ymir was so interested in Mikasa just specifically, with the regular headaches Mikasa would get being later explained as Ymir peering through her eyes to watch her grow up, to see Mikasa also devote herself to a man, to love him and dedicate her whole being in a love where she would keep sacrificing herself for his happiness and dreams. Mikasa loves Eren. He was her everything. He was the one constant in her life, especially after they lost their homes to Titans. When she thought he died, she was ready to throw herself into danger till she joined him. His safety was her #1 concern, with it being a problem that pretty much everyone who knew them would acknowledge, as it often went beyond love and entered obsession territory. This is what reflected Ymir's own life, how she gave herself to the king, mind, body, and soul, as the fucked way Ymir perceived love was through devotion and obedience, that obeying another's will and protecting him was true love. She saw herself in Mikasa, so Mikasa was meant to be the person who could truly free Ymir. As while Eren helped to unshackle her from the chains of servitude, she still wasn't free. Mikasa killing Eren is what truly freed her, as being Ackerman who couldn't be controlled by the Titans, having enhanced powers that made it so she could completely dominate him in a fight, but still loving and following him, made her the perfect parallel. So for Mikasa to do all this, to have such a similar situation, only to turn against him in the end, is what Ymir secretly wished that she could have done. It's why she became so invested in Mikasa's life, that to see someone like her break the cycle would allow Ymir to finally be at peace, to realize that her love wasn't real love, and that it wasn't inevitable. This is the explanation for why it had to be Mikasa, and why it just needed to happen the way that it did. Now here's why I still find the whole situation to just be insufferable. First part, we didn't need this. We already had a fucking great answer to why Ymir still obeyed the king. She was broken. She didn't think she could be any more than this. So had her find out that she had no peace even in death, Ymir just continued to serve others as she didn't feel like she had a choice. Adding she loved Fritz to that equation adds nothing to Ymir's story. Sure, it explains tidbits of things Ishiyama threw in there, like her staring at the king getting married, and why she apparently really died in this moment. But for me, I don't think it really adds anything of value for her character. In fact, it makes her motivation and situation look infinitely worse. Fritz enslaved her, cut out her tongue, hunted her for sport, forced her to have his children. This is some of the worst abuse a person can experience. So to turn around and say the source of her obedience was love, and not emphasize the trauma of being abused, drives me insane, as they had a golden answer. But by revealing that it was really love this late in the game, in the name of a twist to justify a connection with Mikasa, it just permanently alters what people will take away from Ymir's story. then rather than all the focus on her as this person being trapped by circumstance, broken by things outside of her control, the story makes her servitude and the mass death that resulted from her serving Fritz as part of her inability to let go of her love. It implies a level of choice and blame that I despise, that she let this shit happen, trivializing her experience to boiling it down to a toxic relationship and away from the horrific abuse that she experienced. If they had revealed this early, yeah, I would have still hated it, but it would have allowed time for the story to put the slave angle back into the forefront of people's minds, writing this random ass twist at the last second that changed how people will perceive her story. What she felt for the king was never love, but the story doesn't do enough in the time it has left to really push back against that idea. Besides Mikasa having like one line to her, the entire world of Attack on Titan is built around Stockholm Syndrome, of someone falling in love with their captor. And mind you, Stockholm Syndrome doesn't exist. It's pseudoscience. It is complete and utter nonsense. Not to mention Ymir needing to see Mikasa kill Eren in spite of her love creates some just utterly laughable logistics. Like in 2,000 years, no Edenian has ever turned on an abusive partner. Nobody has ever broken free of their obsession over a guy and found freedom. Because I can name 3 in this story alone, one of whom already stood up to a king that was reasonably that she had to live for someone else's sake, crave the love and approval of a certain man, only to body his ass and choose freedom. Historia did that shit. Or if you want something less dead on and more thematically appropriate, we have fucking Gabby. Gabby was raised to love and crave the respect of a system that despised her, that made her a slave in all but name, that used her as a weapon of war and made her fight for the honor of dying for them. But her arc is built around her unlearning that hatred that she had been taught, that the system she was in was just using her, that she is her own person and has value outside of it. Attack on Titan so badly wants you to look at the situation it's built and find it profound and moving. But just thinking about it for more than 2 seconds reveals just how hollow and slapped on it actually is. As like, this isn't the first time Mikasa has stood up to Eren. She has been putting him in his place numerous times, but the story wants us to believe that this one is meaningfully different and fulfills some kind of nebulous criteria that will let Ymir move on, which reveals that this whole thing is more about solving the in-story issue of just what to do with the Titans. The story did build up parallels between these two, but the idea is so dumb and the implications are even worse. Then if you want the thing that actually drives me insane, just think about how the story handles the reveal of this information. This whole grand arc of liberating a woman, it's revealed to us by the fucking abuser stand-in. Eren and Armin are just casually dropping the fact that Ymir actually loved Fritz. They treat it as a valid explanation for why Ymir would spend not 2,000 years, mind you, but with time dilation, she spent closer to 1,000,000 or even 1,000,000,000 years trapped in the past serving Fritz. Eren and Armin don't say, oh, she was abused and couldn't imagine disobeying the king. It's that she loved him, and for that, millions of years and billions of lives were lost. Mikasa and Ymir aren't even in the room to hear this. The culmination of their story, and it's being explained and revealed to us by the 2 more important male characters, because the story has limited time. So Mikasa and Ymir are left just getting scraps, which just feels like the perfect encapsulation of this series' treatment of Mikasa and its female characters in general. It's not as bad as some other shows, but between writing an in-story reason for your main female character's biggest personality trait being obsessing over a guy, putting your second most popular female character in a rock for 4 years and most of the story, killing Ymir too off screen after she had served her purpose, having to go back later in the manga and add pages to actually explain why she did what she did. All of Historia's post-time skip story being about how she's getting trapped as a baby factory, doomed to be used by the Force at large, and rarely do we see her as she is just perpetually trapped on a farm. Oh yeah, and they killed Sasha. While the women in Attack on Titan are given way more depth than your average shonen, there is a pattern here of them getting less than their male counterparts, with the reveal of Ymir's love for Fritz and the brevity of Mikasa's meeting with her just only making that more obvious. As God forbid Ymir, after centuries of being robbed of her identity, be allowed to speak for herself, to verbalize her regrets of not being able to let the fat prick die and to stay with her children, that she saw a happy moment of matrimony as a child and craved it for herself only to be met with more misery. Her rationale for taking that spear to the heart, if it was truly for love, to be seen only for the confirmation that she was nothing but a blood bag with magic to him, that her being treated as a tool by so many people, The actual story only gives her the dignity of us seeing her eyes to imply personhood. Like, it's honestly darkly fucked up and funny that they have a whole scene where the answer to the problem at hand about who controls the Titans wasn't about the two men screaming and arguing with each other about what she should do. But instead, the answer was acknowledging her as a person, only for the finale to end with two men just talking about her all over again. Meanwhile, Mikasa and Ymir's meeting is framed as just the afterthought of Eren and Armin's heart-to-heart. And after all the extra content and clarification that the anime gave us, that they expand upon shit to make sure that we don't misunderstand, to push upon us the wrongness of Eren's actions, nothing extra was given to Ymir or Mikasa, so their pitiful 30 seconds can't do any of the heavy lifting it needs to save this situation. The reveal of Ymir loving Fritz feels to me like a weak, dumb justification to kill two birds with one stone. To have Mikasa kill Eren, which was amazing, and solve the issue of Titans and Ymir. But no matter how much setup they put in to make it make sense in hindsight, in execution, it is dumb and unnecessary. Like, I honestly hope that Ishiyama warmed up before he attempted to make a stretch this big. The idea of freedom and how personal decisions affect the world are at the heart of Attack on Titan, but this narrative choice adds nothing. The finale for Mikasa, her crowning moment, gets the legs swept out from underneath her as the story tries to make an already great moment more profound to a different character. But the reason that they give is so head-turning that it makes you question what you already been told rather than enhance it. I read the manga, and while a lot of stuff can be called into question with the finale, this is the one thing that even years later still pisses me off, and I honestly remember way more than almost anything else here. Mikasa may be free, but we never needed to drag Ymir for it to happen. I hate this with a passion, and now you know why. You're welcome to call me crazy, wrong, or overlooking something in the comments, but this is my take. It is the hill I'm ready to die on. So thank you for watching, like, share, and subscribe, and check out the rest of my videos. I keep wanting to do more anime content, but every time I do, I have controversy. But hey, I may be sarcastic, but at least I'm also honest.